The differences between setting up a fiscal sponsor fund versus a donor advised fund are significant and real. And I think that any donor or philanthropist in advance of setting up either of these two funds should have a proper discussion with a professional that understands the nuances between the funds, but also understands the aspects of doing good, has more of an insider's point of view in terms of the ecosystem itself and how good gets done, because there's some relevant sort of components to that. That being said, within sort of a fiscal sponsor fund and donor advised fund, donor advised funds are very limited in terms of what they can do. Now, there's some similarities. Both of them are classified as what they call a 501c3 public charity, which means that the relationship between the donor and the actual charitable structure from a tax perspective on the inputs going into the charitable structure are exactly the same. For example, if you give to a fiscal sponsor fund cash, you can deduct up to 60% of your adjusted gross income in the year given. Same thing with a donor advised fund. If you give to a donor advised fund cash, you can deduct up to 60% of your adjusted gross income in the year given. So there's the similarity that they're both public charities. So that's the interesting part, but that's actually where the similarities end. They're actually very different entities. When the funds get into the actual fund themselves, they're different. And then what can you do with the assets or funds inside of the actual structure is also different. And I'll kind of cover both in separate parts of this conversation because this is critically important. This is the kind of video that is incredible for wealth managers. If you're listening right now, this is a really good synopsis for you to understand and bring more value to your clients about these structures, so that when you're actually interfacing with them and understanding what their charitable goals are, including inputs and outputs, that you actually give them good advice so they can figure out what are the right structures to set up. Now let's talk about once the actual assets or funds are within the actual structure. Donor advised funds, for the most part, if you deal with major players, they don't really allow for ownership of private equities, only public equities, which are basically products within the public market, stocks, bonds, things of that nature, okay? So any but the big players, that's Fidelity, Schwab, JP Morgan, they're gonna be pretty specific about